breaking fear before it breaks you. How must a human being live life? What is the value of every moment that we journey through? I find that in this lifetime, a child was born into an environment that was intelligence before its intelligence emerged. On some level, as long as we entertain a sort of cause and effect notion to phenomena, the cause was before we were born. And so the mind will always have the unknown to wonder about, to dwell on. Therefore, life is not about, per se, finding your own truth. It does become at a certain phase about that, but life is not about finding your own truth. It's at first seeing where you are. Where you are is a different sort of permission. What that means is it's like the person opens his eyes, and before he decides to jump, he looks around and sees he's on the edge of a cliff. So before there is the intention of externalizing internal phenomena or decision making, so the action internally wonders and then externalizes. You have to see where you are. This is so crucial. That's the whole point of life. It's not about bunkering or cowering away in a sort of system of belief. And so in this episode, I want to look at fear and really the phenomena of fear and what it does. For me, fear is the edge of the experiential reality to some degree, as if your experience of life has been found to be content in certain ideology, and then when that ideology gets challenged, fear arises. This is why people are dismissive of various viewpoints that are not similar to their own. Discrimination is simply that a person feels their origin is different than the other. We are children of the same planet, yet in our minds we don't see the same planet. I find that I was blessed to be introduced to the history of the world, or whatever that is, the stories that we have allowed to carry on in the years of mankind. When I looked at history, I noticed different moments had different dances. It's as if manifestation and the elemental reality, the elemental dimension, is dancing. And it's dancing to its own song. So on some point you will realize that the way your mind orients itself seems to be opposite of the way nature orients itself. There's a reason for this. Because we're not purely natural beings. We are... nature is the glove of the unknown. And the hands that move it are very unknown. That means there's been certain moments I've been under the impression that behind my eyes there's other realities. I treat it like rooms, to be honest, like as if right now I'm speaking to you in a certain room, and if, for example, if I suddenly, let's say you were right now in front of me and you were having a conversation and somebody else came, I would see my conversation with you in one room, and I would see the conversation with that other person in another room. And the thing is, the whole ability of the, I consider it, of the pilot of consciousness is the ability to navigate between rooms of realness. Different things appear as real, certain things appear as unreal. Man is not just experimenting with tools to find truth. Man's mind is an experimentation itself. That means there's a huge chance that life is being watched by its collective self, the individual aspects of life. The samurai had a very interesting concept. It was in their Bushido. And the thing about Bushido, let me me see if I can find this. It's this book called Hagakure. There we go. And so I want to read some quotes from Hagakure. Pretty much the mentality that Bushido people of the samurai tradition had. Many of us see the image of the samurai, but we do not truly comprehend their state of mind. Let me see. We need some quotes from samurais right now. All right, guys, there we go. Yep. Yamamoto Tsunetomo, which in some sense I believe he authored the Hagakure, the book of the samurai. And I'm just going to read some random quotes from it. He says, to give a person an opinion, one must first judge well whether that person is of the disposition to receive it or not. He says, Tsunetomo oh my God. Yamamoto Tsunetomo. I'll just say the book of the samurai, guys. It says, be true to the thought of the moment and avoid distraction. Other than continuing to exert yourself, enter into nothing else, but go to the extent of living single thought by single thought. And there is a certain wisdom to that, but it is not the pure advancement of the complex mind. It's as if, yes, you can live moment to moment, but imagine you had lived moment to moment for eons. You will still be unsatisfied. So there is always the greater surge of the ability of the mind to see more. That means even if somebody showed you a proof of something, you'd be like, thanks, bro, there's more to see still. You know, that's the attitude. That's the attitude that finds everybody's heart, because we know that there is more unknown than known phenomena. Known phenomena has an interesting story to it, that it's the evolution of language in the mind of man. It's like not only did our physical bodies separate from Earth, but in some sense to become creatures, we on some sense ideologically separated from the general idea of the world. And that's the thing, when an idea separates, when you see objective phenomena, you separate it, both the parts, the broken parts are visible. But internal phenomena, when you separate it, what occurs is that you get introduced to the void. So in my personal kind of moments where I've tried to study the mind that is given in the moment, I've kind of looked at my intelligence and I've realized that it has to do with the movement of the attention and what that brings forth. That's a very crucial thing, that your attention is creating you right now, believe it or not. For me, since childhood, altered states of consciousness were fascinating. I remember being young and going and seeing a traditional concert of these Sufi musicians, and there was this one drummer, and this one drummer, it was dombak, like the drum's called dombak. So what it means is it's like there's no sticks, he's just hitting with his hand on the drum, and he suddenly reaches a point where he closes his eyes, and it was so fascinating. All the other musicians in that moment just put down their instruments and let this guy enter his trance. And he entered this musical trance, and it was for the first time, it was kind of divine watching it, because this man had closed his eyes, and it was as if behind his eyes he had entered a different world of skill and was dancing in the magnificence of that reality. So it was as if behind our eyes we bring little fragments of heaven down to earth. Anything that returns to harmony will find itself to fulfill the void. But that's the thing, that it has to do with responsibility, and I'm not sure if our civilization is ready at the moment That means we are ready to look at the order, find the greatest order, fix things up in the best way. But are we ready also to experience the greatest failure? You know, Elon Musk said something very interesting. Elon Musk said when he started a company, he didn't have expectations of success. He expected the company to fail, so that means he wasn't worried about failure. He was just trying to reduce the percentage of failure of the company. So rather than people running after success, he ran after his mentality to the situation was different. And so if we were to think of it that way, we would say, all right, so the viewpoint is human civilization is going to go extinct, but we have to start reducing the percentage of its failure. And that's the efficiency of civilization, Mr. Within, is trying to roar in the streets of our species. That our minds are not just consumers. You cannot consume too long without wanting to feed the world. You know? There's a sort of dance with the world. I find karma is a dance. You know, it's as if your partner makes a move, you make a move. You make a move, your partner makes a move. You know, your attention moves a certain way, reality moves in a certain way. And so you can dance with change, and that dance will be changeless. You will eventually realize that there is a presence to your personality, and this presence is aware of itself in a way that nobody else can know except you. That is the truth of it. Behind your eyes, you are in your own private universe. And so right now as I'm speaking, I have in some sense dared to share that which is of an internal phenomena with the external phenomena. That is the purpose of communication. Communication is a bridge between minds. And a bridge between minds means the greatest idea of one universe integrates with the greatest idea of another universe. So when we get this mentality, we'll be like, holy shit. Rather than trying to, fight for resources like savage animals as a civilization, we just think about it, okay, everybody's here for a certain time. And we have a sort of tourism going on, a sort of journeying going on. And so we are journeying through matter as the viewer of matter. And that's the beautiful thing about language. The world can be translated into many ways. That means sometimes the way I have in some sense had fear, that fear has been certain times instantly eradicated when I changed my viewpoint. And you can only change your viewpoint if you are not convinced by the egoic construct that is the mask of the self. That means I'm telling Mr. Within is telling you your true self is unknown, your temporary self is known. It's as if you see the mask on the face of universal intelligence and are wondering what its face looks like and realizing it is unfathomable. There's this poet named Rumi. He says something remarkable. Just listen to his poetic vision. He says, I died as a mineral and I became a plant. I died as a plant and I rose to animal. I died as an animal and I was man. When was I less by dying? Why should I fear death? I shall die once more as man, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on to that which no mind has ever conceived. So this man is saying that he finds evolution is leading towards the inconceivable. The inconceivable can be said to be the apocalypse of the ego. So you see, I have looked at religion and I've studied it through various lenses. And I could tell you this, that my analysis of it has kind of brought me to a position where I'm like, okay, certain religious groups think that it's like 6,000 years ago the world was made. You know, for example, in Egyptian archaeology, due to the Islamic enforcement of the protection of the state, there's a sort of these European kind of archaeologists going there and being like, yo guys, it seems like there was water here and all of this could have been underwater or something, the pyramids and whatnot. That means if we think about the stones to the pyramids being dropped at the bottom of an ocean and that's how the pyramid was built, is a totally different idea, you know? But pretty much I'm saying is that it's like a limitation on time due to the authority of the ideology having to be correct all the time. Life is not one dimensional. That's why you don't just get one idea and that's it. You roam through many. Your eyes soar beyond above many beliefs. That means like this is what I call true eagle vision, in a sort of subjective way, where just like how an eagle can zoom in, can literally fly down on a branch of knowledge, it can also fly in the unknown sky and observe all phenomena. So what that means is I've had moments where I have been defined by my mind, and there has been moments where I have defined my mind. And in those moments where I have defined my mind, you notice an emptiness. That emptiness is so crucial, because the worst thing is a person sees chaos and doesn't acknowledge chaos. That is the issue with fear. A lot of people who go towards spirituality, let me tell you what's going on. A majority of people seeking spiritual ideology are fueled by desire and fear. They either want to see, they desire a truth beyond their life, or they want to, in some sense, see that there is nothing. Right? It's as if it's like we are a world where if one person got into heaven, the others would complain to God. That's the kind of modernity we live in. Okay. I don't know how to say it, but you know what most people's lives lack? It lacks internal freedom that must come from an internal existential allowance. That means if you as a person see there is something wrong to your external existence, you will not externally fully be active. Anytime your mind has fear, genius is denied. Literally, it's as if like you've put the lens of fear on your camera rather than the lens of genius. The lens of genius has to do not with people. You see, this is true genius. I find true genius is not a human concept. It is how the unknown moves the hand of man in his mind first. And as worlds are written, the stars have meaning. And as words are written, reality emerges with various outlooks and layers of complexity. Tell me, dear listener, is life not a changing thing? I have tried. I have every day I have come when I've given these talks, I have tried to find the true moment. And I've realized it's one of those things that the only truth you will find is a mirror again. In the book of the samurai, Tsunetomo Yamamoto, YT I'll call him, YT tells us it is said that what is called the spirit of an age is something to which one cannot return. Okay, hello everyone. Sorry about that long intermission. Like, there was literally a phone call that had to be made, as important as like the UN calling someone, you know. So, anyways, I'm going to read one more Book of the Samurai quote. Bushido is realized in the presence of death. This means choosing death whenever there is a choice between life and death. There is no other reasoning. So, okay, let me tell you what he means by this. I want you to think about the time back in the day where you had to be a samurai. Imagine you were the young son of a samurai, okay? And your father is coming to you and teaching you the lineage and the whole ideology. And the first thing your father teaches you is that do not fear fear. This is why when it's kind of like the mindset of the samurai. When he chooses death, that means he has accepted the inevitability that we will all leave this world one day, right? So your fear goes away. You're like, okay, I'm temporary, great. So it's a temporary game we're playing. So that's the mindset, right? And he says there's no other reason. And then there's another quote I got to read. He says, if a warrior is not unattached to life and death, he will be of no use whatsoever. The saying that all abilities come from one mind sounds as though it has to do with the sentient matters, but it is in fact a matter of being unattached to life and death. With such non-attachment, one can accomplish any feat. Yeah, that means the true warrior is not disturbed by thought. The greatest warriors, behind their eyes, it's pure silence. Their attention is to the external. You know, they're giving a permission to the external world to be itself in the moment. So you see, the thing is, you have to imagine all the possibilities that can approach you, and I consider layers to data. So first data I entertain is the real. So any data that makes me see reality and see a see reality in a new light, I literally kind of like get drawn towards. Okay, but after I have studied that which is accessible through what is real, I wonder about the edge of reality and I go to the unreal. You see, this is the difference between, see, the thing with the superstitious mentality and the secular, like, you know, non-woo-woo mentality. For some reason, I dislike those words. Unless, like, maybe you're somebody named woo-woo. Like, your last name is W-W. W-U-W-U, you know? But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that it's the realization that the inevitable is the same for both situations. That means what you and everybody alive have in common is that everybody's material body, like a candle where the flame of consciousness is melting its wax, like as you live your days on this planet, the candle wax melts. Eventually, what you need to associate with so much more of your mind being present on this earth than your body, because your body changes. The mind remains, but then the question comes, how far can there be a conscious exploration of it? So what that means is, if this world was strangely, you know, some sort of prison planet, how would we escape this prison, comes the mental viewpoint. And another way of saying that is, if we entertain the simulation theory and that this world is a simulation from a different point in time, then it's as if reality is it can move in many directions. You know, we've had authors, I don't remember the author's name, and I'm not sure if this is the exact year, but the author wrote that I think in 1948 the world stopped, and all of this that we're experiencing to be 2019 is a simulation from 1948, in 1948 or something, you know. And so it's like such an idea like that, or like the whole simulation theory that says that, imagine like how people are making video games and it's becoming so much more accurate and closer to reality. Eventually we will make a video game that is indistinguishable with reality. And this is not a far-fetched idea, simply because there's optical illusions. Like when you stand between two mirrors, even though you're seeing a sort of optical parallel senses of self, but in reality it's an illusion, right? It's an illusion of infinitude. It is about wielding your attention in a way where the unknown is not avoided. The mystic, the concept of a mystic, was a lover of the unknown. That means this was a person who literally, like Moses, was given two options, you know? And it's a situation where you are saying, okay, should I go my whole life being a known thing in an unknown place, or should I be an unknown thing in a known place? And you realize the mind oscillates. In 2019, we're moving towards a secular civilization. Because we're moving towards a secular civilization, that's simply a suggestion that we experienced language, and language was cruel. People opened their ideas, their minds, and it started wars. And so what it means is that ideology is the most important tool. It's as if, like, the samurai would not, no person should hold a sword if they don't know how to use it. Do you see? Or it's one of those situations where the skill has to match the reality level, or the intensity, or the pace, and the attention can become multidimensional due to excitement. So to be honest, all our valuing systems of intelligence has to do with importance. Something is important for us, or is it not? I am telling you, if these talks that I give, if they were like 15% less important, I would not give them. It's like a certain crucial matter, as if, like, I feel like the only way that communication serves is if we see the blind spots of our world and we share it with it, you know? We have to evoke a civilization that cares about a narrative of efficiency. And efficiency has to do to the quality of experience, not how much you have or how much you don't have. More like, what are you experiencing and what are you not experiencing? And then we reorchestrate and redesign the values of culture and civilization like that. It has to start with one mind, and the mind becomes a tribe, and the tribe becomes a civilization. You know, so what I mean by that is it has to do with various individual systems at least acknowledging one common system. You know, I feel that it's like we think that the world is divided now. Some people look at the United Nations and you're like, is this a comedy show? They're united, but they're all separate. And so you see that it's as if there is a reason, because it has to do with the evolution of the cultural mind. That means think about technology growing at a certain speed every year exponentially. Now think about culture and society, and the various dimensions of the person also are evolving, right? So how you are a person, or how you are consciousness, or how you are just purely matter, all of these are ways that the world is seen. Eventually you ask yourself, where is sensory data going? Right now that I'm seeing this moment, where is it going? And you see the location doesn't move. That this is the instantaneity of being that surpasses the mode of thought of an individual. An individual is a creature identified in duality. Now, what is the thing with fear? And let me just kind of say it, because fear is a very important thing to understand. You see, we can say if you're afraid of something and that thing pressures you, you will be afraid and you will do something extreme. That means common sense thing to say is that when you corner an animal, it becomes wild. It feels its reality is being limited, so it fights back like as an evolutionary urge. Now, I find that what's happening in modern society is that people are being cornered. The attention of the human being is being pushed towards ideological corners. And so they feel they either have to accept one thing that they don't like, or they have to run after for the thing they like eternally. It's one of those things where you have to live beyond yourself. It's like, I feel maybe the first 1/4 of your life you should live for yourself, and the rest you should try to rebuild the civilization that you will leave behind. That means there's so many philosophers that have such inspiration. The future for them is freedom, is the true freedom, not now. No person is free ever in the past or now. They are only free in the future. Because the future is the suggestion that there could be something else. New dimensions can enter your eyes. That is the fascination of meeting another mind, you know? And there's so much to learn that I am speaking from my own bubble of reality. This is the beautiful thing. And so what it is it's like as particles we become more complex and there's more motion and eventually there's integration. Think of it this way. Anybody who's following an ideology, imagine you follow that ideology to the point where what you are following reveals to you why you have been following it. And that being tells you that in some sense you have been following yourself. You see, the wise man points the creature internally so it can center to its field of intelligence. You don't, it's as if you can't promise people anything in a changing world. How do you know where that atom's going to go next? You know? For me, science is pretty much the study of circles over circles. That is science. It is the study of the orbits of the planet and the rings of, you know, the electron's hamster wheel, you know. Mortality is our ultimate inspiration. That is the difference we have with other creatures, other species on this planet. We know it will end. They are still in the present moment all the time. You know, if you, it's like being completely in the present moment is also an animalistic thing as well. Only animals need to be enlightened. The enlightened were never animals. How far can your vision lead your civilization? That is the question. And it has to do with things happening pretty much. Really, what it is you either have a strategy, you either run into a situation with ordered inspiration or with chaotic inspiration. Chaotic inspiration is that you stop being afraid of change. So in some sense you first try to make sure you have the ability to be a creature that can exist in any moment. That means it doesn't matter what happens to the moment, your attention can remain. So first study your attention, then your attention will revalue your body and it will bring it into its domain. Your attention is like a commander which immediately becomes allies with the material universe. And when it becomes allies with the material universe, it gets the resources to impose subjective universes. So it's like consciousness is juggling many worlds at the same time, suggesting the juggler is not moving. The ideas move, but the juggler doesn't move. I find that everybody wants the unknown. That's pretty much it. I feel no human being can ever be satisfied even if they got everything they wanted. Because after you have conquered the known universe, you will search and march towards the unknown. And that's the value of our minds. Carl Jung has this quote where he says it is you must make the unconscious conscious or it will dictate your life and you will call it fate. That means before your eyes entered this world, there are many programs at work, many programs that somehow subconsciously are defining you. As you find yourself in a still and silent moment, there the universe is watching. When you ask yourself, well, if the whole cosmos was one gaze, what would it see? And it would see matter moving. You are the advancement of this earth. You are something that has extended from a planet. You have stood up from the planet's dirt into humanity's footsteps on the moon. You see, it's not about anymore the stories we tell ourselves, even though I understand people like Jordan Peterson trying to save the value of narrative in culture. But after the poets have sang their song, it's as if to battle we must ride. The re-engineering and re-envisioning of a new civilization. It's like we can't change the old great. The old ideas won't let us bring new ideas. That's fine. What must occur is new. A new dimension must arise. There's a concept which I consider to be of one of those ultimate experiences that a human being can get on this planet. And it is when the human being, the creature, the self-aware entity, becomes aware of the eyes of, I will be poetic because large audiences entertain this idea, of God. The eyes of God. And let's say God was not an attributable thing. That means you couldn't give it shape. You couldn't give it an attribute. It seemed to be like, what Yoda called force. Certain, religious people are calling God's will, for example, right? So, if you look at the skeleton of the idea of all the religious ideas, you will see they are all relationships with the unknown. And for example, in Buddhist tradition, their relationship with the unknown was they looked at emptiness. They wanted to escape the distraction, Zen and yogic culture. But when you look at the Abrahamic religions, they wanted to do the right thing to get out of this world. They wanted to perform. It's as if their lives were inspired to become a performance that God approved of. You see? And what was God? Well, this is the fascinating thing. It's as if we are afraid of something that we can never fathom. I have asked people from different religions. I saw a Muslim man and I asked him, and how would I say it? I saw, what is the proper word? Like, I saw like a very religious person in the mosque who attended the mosque, and I asked them, what is the idea of soul that the religion shares? And he told me the soul is the secret of God, right? So it's something where man can never know. Even when the prophets were asked, he said the unknown watches us, not we can't see the unknown. That means most prophets in questions about their divinity, they simply said, it's not just the eyes of the prophet that is open, it is the eyes of the world. You see? The unknown is everything else. Everything else you don't know is the unknown, guys. That's where the unknown is. That means your limitations are gifts that if you open them become the limitless. The warrior wonders about why it is holding the weapon. The sage wonders about why it is holding the mind. And to be honest, the mistakes of the past, some of them are meant to die. That means so many mistakes have also died. That means bad technologies in our civilization have vanished, and that was the heroic effort to steer the ship towards the right direction. And the fact that we as creatures have something called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, like, wait, that was a good move. That was very important because we may manage to, in some sense, for the first time, create certain very global values centered around the decency of the livelihood of the creature. Pretty much politics is about what laws of man's mind actualize socially. Albert Einstein tells us that you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. That means when you see your moment or whatever reality you find yourself in, that is one state of consciousness. And if you were to want to see beyond it, that means you would bring forth the emergence of a problem. So you would wonder about the limits of reality, and you would realize that in order to truly see a new state of consciousness, there has to be a complete variation and deviation from the traditional norm. So what that means is you got to leave something behind to go grab something else. But once you grab that something else, you in some sense leave that behind and you return. And when you return, you don't return empty-handed. Your mind has seen. It's as if the divine patted you on the shoulder and your life was changed. The concept of fear could have never existed. Language is an imposition on matter. It is the masks we put on objective phenomena. Yet, do you think an object cares if we call it whatever we're choosing? It's like, no. Objective reality is not self-aware. It doesn't mean there's no consciousness. It doesn't mean an atom isn't a body for a soul. It means it's a... Your mind has to open the doors for you. Rumi says it best. He says, I have lived on the edge of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. This man wrote this 700 years ago. Knocking on a door. He says it opens. The door opens. I have been knocking from the inside. Our thoughts are like the flames of a fire that our consciousness is being. And the purpose of the candle is to share its light before there is no such thing as light. That is when the value of life is reconsidered. As if the freedom from thought is an inconceivable presence, inconceivable to the dualistic mind that is born in this linguistic simulation and cannot climb out of it. Your memories link you with your ideologies. Did you know that? At certain moments, what is real to you ideologically is what you have experienced, what you have heard, what has been shared to you. It's kind of like this playful story I've created where I say, I write a lot of stories too, and in this story it's this idea that the encyclopedia was once in the hand of the child. The child had access to the data of the world. But then as technology emerged, the child got distracted from the encyclopedia because it went towards the entertainment sector. And when the entertainment sector found the child at a young age, the child began to revaluing things. So the encyclopedias were no longer looked at, and in my story I'm talking about how the encyclopedias now stood up from the shelf and ran towards the child. How it is now a responsibility of waves to be set out by every human being. You have to contribute in some way. What that means is you have to be humble enough to see more than your own vision, what is real to you, and entertain the notion, kind of how Aristotle says it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. You observe. You don't per se have to react to what you observe. I feel that is the wisdom of gentleness. That is the wisdom of mastery. It's as if you are consciously maneuvering. You are navigating your attention as a pilot of your consciousness. So let's say you didn't break fear and fear broke you. You realize after fear broke you, you will be left as something, right? You will be left as some moment. So eventually that moment will abide by its energetic being. That means if you were to truly comprehend your energetic existence, it would be so non-conceptual that it would just be a moment's presence. That means right now we are attributing the whole moment's intelligence as the personality. That is the flaw in some sense of modern civilization, but it is an illusion that's needed. You know, it's as if you gotta let nature play its games if you want collective evolution. It's like realizing every person you have ever met, they were a position of mind in an empty universe. How rare is that? How rare is life? That means if you realistically think about it, our ancestors had to pick up swords and in the middle of night run into battle. You know? The emergence of thoughts of the personality from the presence of the void. That moment is, I find, a moment of pure observation. And what happens is, this is the crucial, interesting thing. If you were to not have any thoughts, there would still be the difficulty of the limitations of the DNA, right? So what I'm saying is that If you weren't, let's say if you have no thought, we say it's kind of like entertain the traditional model of the spiritual view, that in some sense it was mind body, it was body mind soul, right? Body was very crucial for the mind's existence, and the mind was required for the body to have a soul. That means it's as if the soul doesn't care if it's a soul. The mind wonder who cares if it's a soul, right? But the body is like just the inanimate. It is the paint. It is the paint, and the mind is the paintbrush, and the soul is the hands of the unknown waves of the cosmos. It's very fascinating. It's as if anything you fear, it's as if you have no idea how that fear perceives you. So in some sense, we are left to the unknown. To be able to trust the unknown is, I find, the peak of art. But the intentions of that unknown must be filtered through natural morality. That means it's like only the honest can wield the divine weapon. And the divine weapon is not a physical weapon. It is a beam of light towards something. Believe it or not, I've had sometimes this playful idea that truth is orbiting. You know how like as the sun orbits, imagine we didn't have light bulbs, and so it was just pure darkness when the sun went out. We didn't even have candles and fire, okay? I should have just from the beginning said we didn't have fire. And so imagine when the sun goes, it's complete darkness. So it's as if suddenly reality is empty. And suddenly when the sun comes the next day, all manifestation and visibility appears. And in some sense, suddenly reality has appeared. Truth has appeared. Something for there to be truth for has appeared. So you see, it's a dance between light and darkness, fundamentally, our psychologies. And this dance between light and darkness is kind of like the world opening, the world closing, kind of like the eyes of the cosmos opening and closing, opening and closing. When they open, civilizations and eons of manifestation are occurring. When they close, it's as if none of it existed. As if the planet was crying and laughing at the same time, and all human beings were, yo, planet, why are you crying and laughing at the same time? And the planet said, I am crying. The planet said, I am laughing because I have realized I choose what happens to me, right? And human beings were like, then why are you crying? Imagine he said laughing. I'm laughing because I realized I choose what happens to the planet. The planet is saying this. And so the planet says, I'm crying because I realize and see that all of humanity is living their individual worlds without realizing the true eyes of the moment. And the true eyes of the moment doesn't mean you start worshiping the infinite. It's like that's a game of its own. That's an optical illusion as well. It's more about as you step out of the thought, your presence moves you. Your presence is how your trust arrives from a field of intelligence. Your mind is being a successful part of the moment, and this is why the intuition is appearing that way. It's as if in your subconscious mind you have the answer, but in your conscious mind you have no clue what to do. And just for a second you stop, let's say, thinking in that moment, and you see the voice of your subconscious mind arrives to you. So it is about access, kind of like how if your brain was some sort of leading to some sort of subjective multidimensional antenna, it's as if we are receivers of reality as much as we are expressed in it and through it. And the whole point of creativity is that that's the permission of consciousness. The only reason creativity is important is because we evolved to a point where we could be aware of ourselves and do something new. That doing something new is the inspiration of art. It is the introduction of it's the introduction of the treasures that are within the unknown. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. And to be honest, the ultimate resolution is you keep your attention on ideas that serve you. Because to be honest, the mind is so advanced, if you really choose to go down a dark alley, it will make it endless. So what that means is like, think of it this way. You get to be alive and awake for a certain time before it's as if then, there is a sort of blank abyss that we go through. So what I'm saying is that the value of the waking moment is in its ability, that how far its internal vision inspires present action. So you see, the past can influence how you behave in the present moment, and the future can influence how you behave in the present moment, right? There's so many people in society who have artificial personalities simply because they are trying to plan for something in the future. The guy wants to get that raise, and he's like, all right, I'll forget who I am. Let me just be my boss's mirror, you know? Who we are is more than who we think we are if we were never a thought. So Mr. Within is kind of like watching the educational system. I'm like, okay, when will they realize that it's all unknown? When will they realize the presence of the unknown that brings forth the vision of the observer? Because the concept of someone who can know something, knower and knower, that concept is literally someone who is seeing more while having access to what that person saw before. So it's a kind of bridging your past with your future. But eventually it will all be puppeteered by the past. So you got to be very careful how much you care. When you really care for something, like this is, to be honest, how I find there's many great stories of divine lovers throughout history and in different parts of the world. And many of them were motivated by the impulse that when you were in the presence of your lover, you were not trying to be anything. You were just present. And that presence meant that you saw what was there, not what you wanted to be there. Because when we want people to be just like how we see them in our minds, then we have forgotten how nature works. It's as if there's a saying that really liberated me, where it was like, I don't know who said it, but it was like, everybody's fighting a war you cannot see, a battle you cannot see. And that sentence means you can never know people. You can know what they reveal to you, of course, and you build upon blocks of impression. But I'm saying, like, true presence must require a liberating thing. It's as if only the victorious can sit comfortably at the same table. Those who were defeated are still being defeated by fighting. You can never fight defeat. You'll just get defeated. It's as if the vision has to change. Think of it this way, that what your life per se needs is not just more objective value. It requires maybe an ideological shift, as if thought was a sort of telescope you use to study reality through a sort of lens of language. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. Much